when I focus on one step, then I can look back and see the progress and appreciate it. Because when we try to do it all at one time, it's like, I'm not getting anywhere, I'm not getting anything done, and we can't appreciate the moment and how far we've actually come in building.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on this week's Tax Rep Network podcast. I'm Eric Green, as always. So I am joined today. It took a while to get this together, but I'm joined today by America's favorite EA, Timalyn Bones. So thank you for taking the time. It was funny. I said, we really have to do this. And Timalyn was like, I literally have a window tomorrow. Let's do it. And, and we're here. And I am actually a fan of hers. She has a YouTube channel, a podcast. In fact, you know what? To do you justice, I actually have my notes. She's the owner of Bones Tax Solutions, a virtual firm based in Louisville, Kentucky. She is a major educator in this space and is filling the tax literacy gap with her blog, Tax Tips with Timalyn, and the podcast Tax Relief with Timalyn Bones. I generally watch the YouTube channel, but you can listen to it on the podcast channels as well. She started her career in public accounting, kind of like I did. I think doing a lot of good in this space, which is actually one of the things I want to get into, is I am noticing, but actually before that, how are you?
I am doing good, and it is my honor to be here. Like you said, I'm glad it worked out. We had this window because we've been trying to get this together. So I'm excited to talk tax rep and EA world and all the stuff with you today.
Yeah, no. I'm noticing in fact, that's actually, I think originally how I found you is we had members who mentioned that they followed you. So I started listening and following. Well, no, I mean, but I feel like there's a lot more interest from tax preparers to finally get their EA. One is that kind of what you're seeing, and what do you think is behind it, aside from you?
I think I'm a small drip in the pond. I think people are noticing the opportunities that the EA credential can open them up to. One of the things that a lot of people that I've encountered didn't realize before is that they don't have to have an accounting degree. They don't have to have a law degree like you. Um, I I share like, hey, I get to argue with the IRS and get paid for it without having the student loan debt from law school. So I think there's that, but then also recognizing the impact that they can have on other people's lives as well by getting this credential.
Right. No, it's I agree with all of that. First of all, I think for the audience, if you're not enrolled, there is some level of credibility in having the designation, right? You've proven you take the test, you have a baseline of knowledge. I don't mean to be rude, but I'll be honest. My law partners and I, if we were going to bring somebody in for a non-filer case or to assist, it's not going to be someone who's unenrolled. And this is the lawyer in me. And the reason for that was, I'll tell you the truth. On the forensic side, Don Brolin, I don't know if you know Don, but Don is an old friend of mine. I urged her to get the CFE, and I told her at some point, my law partners, Jeff, Lisa, they won't use you if you don't have the initials after your name. Because if we have to put you on the stand, how do we prove you're an expert? You could be the greatest forensic person in the world, but if you don't have any designation, we're going to have a very difficult time convincing anyone you're an expert. So first of all, I think the EA, it sends a message. It's certainly good for your marketing if you include that, but it does allow you to represent people before the IRS. Even if you don't necessarily want to just focus on resolution or representation, the ability to get transcripts, talk to the IRS, get a whole whatever. If there's an audit notice, you're not trying to do this. You can do, if you in fact are an EA, you can do 95% of the things I do. The only time you'd have a problem is in a criminal case. And frankly, there aren't that many of them. So I had that once. I had a CPA come up and he said, look, Eric, why don't you refer all your other work to us and you guys just focus on the criminal work? Like, I'll prove in 3 months how I can go broke. I wish they do more criminal cases. There just aren't that many of them. And so there's a huge need for that. I have found folks who are EAs are more entrepreneurial. Not always. I mean, we have some CPA tax rep members who are very entrepreneurial, but I find more that the folks who have their EA tend to be more entrepreneurial. And the reason I say that I think it's important, I think that's where this industry is going.
I would agree.
I mean, if you're somebody who wants to just sit and do returns, I hope you're 70 because you are a dodo bird. That is going to be going away between automation, AI, and the rest. So now this is going back to fall 2019. At our IRS Rep Summit at Mohegan Sun, I had the CIOs, the chief information officers from Markham, Eisner Amper, Citron Cooperman, and Marks Paneth. They're all big regional firms in the Northeast. 500 to 1,000 accountants, that size. And they all across the board basically predicted nobody at their firm will be doing tax returns, they said, by 2020. They have the whole process automated. And what they're really looking for in terms of folks that bring in, you don't even need to have an accounting degree. They're looking for young people who are smart and driven, who can become consultants and advisors. And that's where the whole industry is, I think, going. So one reason to get your EA is to be able to do advisory and rep and all of the other stuff and
Mhm.
automate as much of this as possible. Take it from a practice to a business, right? Now, I noticed, Timalyn, you have one episode out about how to make $100,000. My tagline for years was add 100,000 to your bottom line. Now I know where I came up with 100,000. What made you pick that number?
I don't know like who made it a thing, but a lot of people that I spoke to, like that was their goal. And then it was like people magically went from that to $1 million. But with the $100,000 within my community, even peers as well, I kept seeing people just want to hit that first goal of $100,000. And going back a little bit to what you said, I do see in the EA community more people driven to be entrepreneurs. And I think that can be a good thing, but it can also be a crutch. And I'll explain because coming up in the CPA world and everybody wants to go work in a firm and go that way, I think they take more advantage of human capital. So we're going to hire people, make as much money as we can. Whereas, and again, it's a trend that I've seen. EAs are like, I'm going to come in and do all the work. So there aren't systems in place and processes. Because for me, coming in from CPA firm experience, I was like, oh, shoot, well, if I just put this process in place, $100,000 isn't that bad. It's just the science magic numbers. So again, seeing my peers and then also people within like the mentor community just being like, I just want to make that first 100,000 because I don't have as much overhead. So that's still like 80,000. It's like, man, I have to be the bearer of bad news with this entrepreneurship journey. Netting 80,000, you're not making 80,000 because you still got to pay taxes too. But that's where I came up with that number because I had to think about where I was when I started. I said, I'm going to focus on this full time once my daughter goes to kindergarten. And again, it was a privilege for me having experience in public accounting and being able to take the systems and things that I saw. I was able to do it in less than 12 months. But because I had that, again, background where you don't have to have an accounting background or experience working under somebody as an EA, but it's invaluable. And it definitely put me ahead of the learning curve. So I was like, you know what? Let me try to show that and break down a roadmap to help other people see that it's achievable for them too.
So yeah, I came up with 100,000. I was asked, well, how much money can I make? I mean, the sky's the limit, but that doesn't answer anyone's question. So I looked at my average fees. Now this is going back 10 years ago. The average fee across all my cases was $8,350. And so I said, if you can get one client a month, you could add 100,000 to your bottom line. And so
Mhm.
that's where it came from. Add 100,000 to your bottom line. Because honestly, I figured it was such a low bar that I could really push all the tax rep members to hit it. Not all do, but enough of them were doing it. Then they were like, well, what's the next thing? Well, I didn't have another thing. I'm like, I don't know, 150. It's one of those, I don't know. And somebody said to me, how do I get to 1 million? And we adopted the build $1 million practice because I don't know about you. What I found was, I got to 100, 150. Like I kind of like marched up to around 250 in terms of just what I was generating revenue. And then it kind of leveled out. And what made the difference was, and there's a great book on this about scaling, where they basically challenge, it's set in the class, and they challenge the class to double your income in 6 months. And what they point out in the book, the authors, if you have to double in 6 months, let's be honest, if I said, Timalyn, look, you're at 250, I want you to get to 300. No offense, small price increase, get a few referrals, you're there.
Hmm.
You're not really making that big progress. If you want to scale, they said if you have to double, all of a sudden you have to start thinking, how am I going to get that kind of explosive growth? So you start thinking about things you hadn't thought about before, partnering with other organizations, all kinds of like outside the box things to really make the leap. Because that's what I ended up doing. All of a sudden I discovered like public speaking. And now I'd be getting, four, five, six clients a week referred because I drove all over Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. I spoke in beer halls, veterans of foreign wars. I did one in an Irish bar. The person in the front row fell asleep because they wanted me to do it from 4 to 6 p.m. and they came from work or whatever. And yeah, I remember the first guy
Yeah,
in the front row fell asleep. But that's when I think I went from like 250 to 5 or 550, right? And so when I came up with the million, my message out to my folks, the tax rep members, was look, you can keep growing and you can just, go along. And if that's if you want, not everybody wants the same thing. But if you're looking for explosive growth, here are some ideas, that you have to kind of get over your fear, which I think is actually kind of a big one. You've obviously gotten over it. I managed to get over it. But like the public speaking thing, I have them. I'm like, really? A middle-aged Jewish guy with a lisp and glasses. I do it. You can't. And so it takes some poking and prodding, and now with AI, you don't even have to do it. Your avatar can do it.
that's true. There's so many different tools that can be used now, but people suffer or struggle, I should say, so much with imposter syndrome. So, like I said, I don't know who made $1 million the next cool thing, but I remember before we actually even met on Zoom, I was like, oh, yeah, I read your book. And I felt validated because I was like, Eric was just an organic, grinded out person like I was. I am. I remember when I started Tax Tips with Timalyn, somebody I viewed as like a mentor told me, they're like, if you write, you're not going to make any client or get any clients from that. And what I have to remind people is make sure that you are leaning in on your strengths because, yeah, YouTube is great. I get more calls from YouTube, but the more qualified client is going to come from the podcast and the blog. But it's a long game and you have to be consistent.
Hmm. You know what it is? What I've told people is, will your website get you clients? No. Will your podcast? No. Will the blog? No. But if you're doing this consistently, people now go looking, either find you or get referred to you. Now people that get referred to me, they're going to go look at the website. They're going to go and Google me, right? I mean, that's the world today. And what they're going to see is I'm clearly the person. I mean, I've got a podcast and a blog and a YouTube channel, whatever. Now, to me, it all feels like a bit of a chaotic mess. But to them, dude, this guy does this, all this guy talks about.
Yeah.
I think the blog, I prefer blog. I like the way I can get stuff across, but I have found that people like the video because they get to see and hear me. And there's a comfort level with that.
Hmm.
The biggest thing I've told folks, and I don't know if you've discovered this, I did, don't your way through it. Don't,
Yeah.
no one, people can smell insincerity. If you're you, assuming you're a decent person, people will warm up to you. But given, I think, I'm curious, with the EAs or new EAs that you see coming through, are there certain mistakes you see people making?
I think you hit that first one right on the head. The not being themselves and genuine. I love to write. I'm a tax nerd. I'll go explore stuff and write about it, but that's who I am. Same thing with video. I'll have people tell me, well, like, I can't do the podcast. And I'm like, the podcast that people actually see me as the subject matter expert for is audio only. I said, I wish I had known about that before and not having to edit. So we have people that aren't genuine, and then when they actually connect with a prospect, they're running into a different person, like, oh, whoa, like, who are you? And then another major mistake that I see, again, because in the EA world, it's more like entrepreneurial driven and not building a firm with employees. We have people with no tax or accounting experience who feel like they're alone on an island. So they don't go find community, they don't go find mentorship. And can they make the balance worse? Potentially if they filed a return wrong or late, but it's still adding more time because maybe you submitted an OIC and it's a pretty clear case that they're not going to be eligible for that. So now you've added 6 to 9 months that the IRS can collect, all because I don't know if we want to look at it as fear or pride and ego. You didn't reach out and ask for help. You didn't say, like, hey, this is an investment in my business. Some mentorship happens organically, some of it you have to pay for. But if you're building your business, it's an investment worth making in yourself and your business.
That's been my feeling is you need to invest in yourself. If you want to get healthier and you don't have to belong to a gym, but going to the gym is going to be a good investment generally, assuming you go. Any of this stuff, right? If spending the time studying for the EA, I can assure you, if you get your EA, that will pay for itself many times
Yes.
over. And so it really is the if if you are your business, you really need to invest in yourself, education, your health, all of that. And nowadays, the automation and the software, because so I literally just had on the podcast last week was Michelle Seiler Tucker, who wrote it's a best-selling book, Exit Rich. What she's an M&A person, so she buys and sells practices and all that. And what she told us, if you're somebody who's sitting there doing returns, you can probably expect to get paid zero point 0.8 times your EBITDA. But if we show up and you've got multiple streams of income, advisory, rep, return preparation, bookkeeping, and you've automated this, you've automated the bookkeeping to a third party, so or whatever you've done with that, you've automated your return prep, Gruntworks, Lissia, all that stuff. You've automated your engagement letters, the payments up front, all that, or you're in subscription pricing. She
Mm-hmm.
said, I can get you 1.3 times gross revenue. So that $1 million practice, one person is going to get 400,000. The person that's automated with the same revenue is going to get 1.3 because people want to buy a business, not a job. And
Yes.
so all of the automation these days, I've had, I speak at Scaling New Heights. I don't know if you've been, it's
I
the
haven't
largest
been yet.
accounting tech conference in the country. And I've had folks come up to me who walk around being like, who needs all this? I don't think you need all of it, but there are certain aspects of that. First of all, make your life easier, right? And all of that. But if you view your business as an asset, I would want to make my asset as the most valuable it can be.
Mm-hmm.
So, the invest in yourself thing and your practice is big, both again, the education, your own health, but also the actual, the infrastructure, your tech stack is
I would say too, and I don't know about if you see this with attorneys or with CPAs. I don't think when people pass the EA exam, they realize the authority that they have that only two other credentialed professionals have. So I see the issue with people not walking in their authority, and maybe they don't understand what that authority is. I encourage them to read Circular 230 again, not just for the sake of, uh, what do you call it, preparing or asking for enrollment privileges, but that not full understanding of how powerful it is shows up in their marketing or lack of marketing. Because I have people complain, well, nobody knows what it is. That is my sweet spot. I'd love to tell you what an enrolled agent is. So much so that YouTube is now paying me to tell you what an enrolled agent is
Yep.
because you can capitalize on the fact that there's not a lot of information out there about it unless you go to the IRS website or an EA review system. But hey, I'm not trying to sell you on anything yet.
Yep.
I'm just telling you how I can help you. And hey, I have the authority to step in your shoes and be your mouthpiece and negotiate this IRS issue. And it's a team effort, but you don't have to deal with your fear of the IRS because I'm here to partner with you and do that. And like to see that light bulb like go off in EA's heads, like, oh, I am somebody. And I'm like, yeah, and don't you forget it when you send that invoice either.
Yeah. No, it's it's I think similar. Years and years ago, an older tax attorney told me she actually no, you know what? She was an EA. I met her at the state of Connecticut used to have these kind of combined dinners. The Society of CPAs, the tax bar, and the EA Society when we would do a joint dinner and invite someone from the IRS or Department of Revenue or whoever. And I was sitting next to her and she told me she was an EA. She passed the US tax court exam, which is very difficult. And I honestly
Yes.
don't recommend it. It's a lot of time, a lot of effort. I don't think you're going to get enough tax court work to justify the hours you're going to put into it, but that's just me. But what she did say is she discovered the public is very impressed by this stuff. So her marketing was that not only was she licensed by the IRS to deal with the IRS and resolve issues with the IRS, but she was also authorized to practice in the United States tax court. Now, 99% of clients will never need that. But she said, but they're very impressed, and she would actually take cases from law firms and everything else. And I think the lesson is if people are like, well, I don't know, no one knows what an EA is, they don't have to. In fact, arguably, maybe we're better off if they don't know what it is. What you really want to do is be able to tell them, I'm licensed by the IRS to deal with the IRS, whether it's your return, resolving a tax debt, or any other issue you have. Clients will be very impressed by that. Taxpayers are going to be like, well, I don't know about all these other people, but they're licensed by the IRS. I'm going to go with them. The other thing is you do have real power, which is good and bad. I've had to explain to them when you're on a power of attorney, what you're saying things on the record.
Mm.
And so because I've had folks say, well, I wasn't really sure the answer, so I kind of guessed. Well, no, don't we don't guess. Tell them you don't know. It's funny. So I have a client who got audited, and criminal investigators ended up showing up at one point, and he gets my name, calls me, and I said, well, so I'm thinking, all right, what's going on? Cash, whatever. He said nothing. I have no idea what they're talking about, which is unusual. Usually they come to me and they're like, yeah, I think I got caught. They're like, no, he literally said, I have no effing idea what they're talking about. So I speak to them, and the lead investigator, he said, we need to know who the silent partner is. Name, ID number, address, something. I'm like, I'll talk to the client. I call the client. He's like, I don't have a silent partner. I don't know what they're talking about. I speak to the accountant, and oh no, so I called the criminal investigator back, and I said, there is no silent partner. He literally has no idea what you're fucking talking about. And I know that the agent, and he said, well, that's not what the accountant told us. Really? So I called the accountant, who's unenrolled, by the way, just as an aside. And I said, they're asking about a silent partner. They said, you told them this. He said, they mentioned, the auditor, it was a civil audit, mentioned, the guy does really well. He makes a lot of money. And I told him, I think he has a silent partner.
Oh my
I said,
goodness.
why did you say that? He said, I don't know. I just kind of thought he probably does. First of all, what a strange thing to come up with. He's very successful. He must have a silent partner is just like, it's like in the realm of weird. Okay. But it took 2.5 years of a criminal investigation, pulling his bank records. They actually sent us reports every time he'd gone in and out of the country. They wanted to know where he went and why.
Oh my
Did he report
goodness.
did he have more than 10,000? I mean, I don't want to be gross. It was a real surgical review of him. And in the end, they returned it to civil. It was nothing, but it cost him 25,000 in legal fees and all the rest. And I can tell you right now, the fear. You don't want, I do this for a living. I wouldn't want to be the target of a criminal investigation by the government.
Yeah, not at
Um,
all.
Nope, I've seen clients on the receiving end of that, and I will tell you, even if you did nothing wrong, they're going to try to figure out a way to find something wrong, and that's the part. If to go off on a tangent, I find most disturbing about the system. And while we're on this weird topic, I had a client who's a police officer, and at one point during his service, in I guess actually getting a bad guy in the struggle that ensues, he breaks his trigger finger, so he's on disability. The reason I bring that up, anyway, he gets audited. The auditor sees all these other deposits. The claim's unreported. It's got to be criminal, right? Refers him. What he did is he collected, bought, and sold guns. Now, if you're not a gun person, I've learned more about guns than I ever wanted to know. They don't tend
That's
to
the
go
cool
up.
part of the job.
They
You get
don't
to
tend to
learn
go
about
up.
all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah, and you learn about all kinds of people. Uh, the in the buying and selling of guns, if you go and buy a Glock 17 for $700 or whatever, if you sell it a year later, it's worth $675. If you bought someone else's, it's 710. They don't go up and down in value very much. I mean, they're polymer, plastic, whatever. So unless you have George Washington's gun from the Battle of Brooklyn Heights, they don't. So, but if it's personal, you have cost basis. So all these things that he didn't think he had to report it because it's his personal gun. Why would he have to report a sale? Net, he doesn't owe he owes them barely anything, like $1,200 over 3 years or some nonsense like that. So the criminal guys, they're not closing the case 6 months, 9 months. And I finally got one of them and I said, "What are you doing?" They said, "Well, we looked into his disability claim, think he maybe committed insurance fraud, but apparently I guess it was his trigger finger, so I guess that's legitimate." I was like, are you insane? But this is what they do. They're going to try to find something. And that's the part that really bothers me about our system. It's still the best system in the world, but it ain't perfect. And so anyway, net, to bring this back, when you're in a power of attorney, you are making legal statements. So don't guess. I
Hmm.
think he has a silent partner. Again, it's just such a weird thing to think. Unless the client told you, look, I got a partner, he kind of helps me here and there, some of the money goes to him. That's a different issue, in which case you shouldn't be filing the return because you know it's not accurate. That said, so no, it is with an EA, this comes down to, I think, mindset is really, I mean, we're dancing around, but it's really mindset. If you understand you have a license, it's powerful. The public would be impressed if you actually explain what you can do and you go about building your practice to be a business that can deliver that. I don't see why you cannot in give it 2 to 3, 4 years, why you can't build to $1 million. Now, anyone can do $1 million. I don't think if you're going to do returns the historical traditional way, you're going to want it. You're going to want to kill yourself, the amount
Yeah.
of hours it's going to take. But if you can put the pieces in place, outsource what you need to, maybe you find one or two good employees. That's tough to do these days. People don't want to work. You can build a very profitable practice that can be completely virtual, that you can run from anywhere, and it's really, I think I think that what I'm falling on is it is about mindset.
Hmm. At 110%. When I did the EA boot camp, it was funny because the first session I did, I called it business foundation. So people think we're going to do a business plan. They're excited about that part. But it tackled more so mindset because we looked at like the vision and then what rules do you have to live by to actually get there? The principles and things that you have to believe about yourself. So everybody was like aiming for and missing these goals, but it all fell back to something that they didn't believe about themselves. So we're always our biggest stumbling block when it comes to building a business out.
Yep. No, the when I played college football, there was hanging in the locker room a sign: hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Most of life is just showing up and working. So I get most people, I think, give up because of fear. Fear,
Hmm.
I'll fail. Fear, I'll be made fun of. People don't get it. The when it really, other than maybe musician, actor, although maybe even actor, musician, and like professional athlete. I think everything else just comes down to two questions. What do you want? And what are you willing to pay to get it? How hard are you willing to work? Because I can tell you right now, Jeff and I have built a $5 million law firm. I think we're bright. Neither of us is a genius, but nobody will outwork us. And
Hmm.
that's really just it is, when I tell my members, they say, well, yeah, I've been doing the marketing. I'm not getting enough. Do more. I mean, do more, right? You did a talk and you got a little bit. Okay, do it again. Do it again. Do it again. And um, 2 years ago at our summit, somebody asked, like, what do you do for work-life balance? And I told them the truth, which my marketing team didn't like, which is I have none. I actually have. In fact, it's one of the ongoing discussions my wife and I are having now. Now that we're empty nesters, our youngest went off to college. This idea that we're both going to, we could both work 24/7. That maybe that's not a great plan. So
Yeah.
we're trying to be a little more disciplined about work ends. We're gonna go for a walk. We're gonna watch a show. We're gonna whatever, not be working. So far we're getting mixed results, but we're working on it. It's a what do you call it? It's work in progress.
Yeah. I mean, and I get it. It's a good thing to love what you like to do or love the work that you do. But I have what, 6 more years, 6, 7 till I'm empty nester. And like, I have to be intentional. I'm like, yeah, if I make all this money, but then my daughter doesn't like me, is that going to be worth it? So, even in those like scaling and building phases, making sure that you have certain things set up. Because right now I'm a middle schooler. I want a little bit of flexibility, but we have those intentional, we're women's basketball fans around here. So, hey, she has all the games in my calendar and she's like, I just saw the alert. You did too. We gotta leave.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you can't get that back. Uh,
Yeah.
and for me, the answer was, and I mentioned this in the book, I would get up at 4:30 in the morning and work until 7. Then they
Yeah.
had to get up, they went off to school. So, and the other thing is no one's bothering me at that time. I'm not getting emails and phone calls and whatever. And so now being middle-aged, that's a little bit harder for me. On the flip side, they're off in college and one's graduated, and so it's not as big a deal now. But no, it is if you're willing to work at it. First of all, you have to figure out what you want. Like, what do you want?
Yeah.
Explain what you want your practice to look like, what you want your day to look like, your week, your month, and then just keep working at it. Most people quit. When it's not easy, they quit. If you don't quit, you'll outwork them.
Yeah. Consistency wins the game for sure.
So, what is the big message from America's favorite EA to everyone listening to this?
No pressure at all, Eric. No pressure at all. I would say the big message is take one step at a time. I think we set a goal and then we try to do it all in one day. And just using like what you said, keep working. Like if you have a goal, but you have the step at a time that you need to take, it allows you to be consistent. And what I have found too, when I focus on one step, then I can look back and see the progress and appreciate it. Because when we try to do it all at one time, it's like, I'm not getting anywhere, I'm not getting anything done, and we can't appreciate the moment and how far we've actually come in building. And I'm preaching to the choir because I still have to be like, oh, wait, I am doing way better than I was back here.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Ed Milet, who's a has a huge podcast and is an influencer. He's built a huge financial services firm, and he mentions that whole, oh, how do you overcome? How do you change your mindset and all that? Because he came from a really rough childhood, and he talked about what he called touching the dream. That if he had like a really good month or whatever, that he and his wife would go away, maybe to the Four Seasons. He could golf, she could go to the spa. And he said, over time in doing that, you begin to feel like you belong. And he started to get over this imposter
Mm,
syndrome. I mean, one of the great things to do, for instance, if someone's a new EA and you're not, why don't you go to the national conferences like the NATP, the NAEA has one, AICPA? Get involved in a committee. First of all, it's amazing how these partners at these big firms are really kind of just like you. They're probably a little bit further ahead. They may have started earlier, who knows? But that's what I found at the ABA is I started hanging around with people and realized, the people I hung around with, Chuck Reddick, who's our former IRS commissioner, Kathy Keneally, who's the former DOJ tax chief, day to day, like Kathy Keneally is a big pizza fan, like I am. I mean, you just hang out with them, and you know what? Their practice isn't that dissimilar, and the stuff that their headaches are not dissimilar. And first of all, you build a network. Second of all, it's
Hmm.
how I started meeting everyone at the IRS was through the committee work. Because as chair of committee, you got to work with your IRS counterpart in terms of planning, panels and conferences and all that stuff. So you will volunteer time, and I'm sure we're all like, "Oh, time's money." This is a good investment. That network is invaluable.
Yeah.
And that's why I can email them, say, look, I got this situation. Do you have a few minutes? And have them call and say, we did that. Here's kind of how we approached it. And first of all, you're not out there alone. Right? If you put yourself on an island, you've done that to yourself.
Hmm.
You can be a solo and still have an enormous firm at your fingertips because of your network. Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, you'll impress the hell out of clients. I went into a client. Sam Bernstein ran the FBAR program for the IRS when the FBAR was a real hot thing. And I know Sam from working with the IRS. So I get called into one of the big accounting firms. It's been since bought by a bigger firm. The partners clearly hated that they had called me, the client had called me, because they were all kind of put out. And the client said, "Look, we're having this issue, the FBAR penalties, whatever." And I said, "Yeah, but I think the auditor is wrong. That the general stand is not to penalize until whatever." I said, "We just have to get to ask Sam." Like, who's Sam? Well, Sam Bernstein runs the program. I pulled out my cell phone and we called Sam. Who answers? And we're talking about the program. I said, "Look, I'm actually sitting with some folks. We have an auditor. Auditor's automatically applying all the FBAR penalties." He said, "Is there any fraud?" I said, "No." He said, "Was there unreported income?" I said, "No." He said, "The auditor's wrong. Cite our internal revenue procedure, blah, 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 blah. All right. And send that over to them. If you have a real problem, call me back." So I made 680,000 go away within a few weeks. The auditor and supervisor agreed and removed it. I'm a hero. I made a phone call. First of all, it impressed the hell out of everyone in the room that I can just call Sam, right? Anyway, the point is, whatever it is I think it was Henry Ford, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right.
Hmm.
If you want to do that, build that kind of a network, be able to get people on the phone, you can do it. I will guarantee everyone listening to this, you can do it. It's not going to be overnight. You have to put the effort in. You're going to have to go to these meetings. You actually have to. This is going to sound strange to anyone under 30. You're going to have to actually meet people
In person.
in person.
Get
Those of you
offline in
watching
person.
watching YouTube, you'll see this. But if you're listening to this, I'm holding up my phone. My friends are not on my. I mean, I have friends who are on my phone, but the people I meet through my phone are not my friends. All right, those are random people on social media who think that they're going to sell me a down jacket or whatever nonsense I got last night. The point being, you can go do this. I'm living proof of it, and trust me, if you hung around with me long enough, you'd know I'm no genius. It's a matter of know what you want and just spend the time and follow Timalyn because her messaging is very no, really, it's very, very good. Your content is great. I highly recommend people dive in.
Yeah, it's funny you brought that up because I was teaching a marketing workshop and I guess people because they see me online thought that's all I was going to talk about. I said I built this business going around and introducing myself to people, finding out what networking events people, and it sounds like a stalker now, but people who I wanted to meet where they were going to be.
Right?
And hey, if I got to pay $50 to get into this luncheon, I'm going to go because if nothing else, same thing I told you, Tim and Linda had a baby. It's Timalyn. Next time I come, they remember who I am. I talk about a case that was over 400,000 that I got settled for much less. Hey, they remember me. There is not a price tag. Now it will cost you time initially, but not a price tag that you can put on your in-person network because somebody explained it to me this way. They were like, if you have fish jumping in the boat, why are you throwing them out? Every good impression, you're building disciples who can sell you better than you can sell yourself.
Yep. Now you mentioned the whole stalking thing. We'll wrap with this. So I wanted I wanted to do something really with Chuck Reddick when he was the chair of the Civil Criminal Penalties Committee at ABA. And you can't just get on their panel. There's so many people from government, everything that want to be on these programs.
Hmm.
But every committee at the ABA, so what happens is that the meetings were Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Well, Saturday afternoon, nobody wanted to do programming. Half the place was empty. So the ABA made every committee every other year you had to come up with something. So every committee stuck with this, and nobody wants to do it. I knew they had the same problem we did. So I was chair closely held. So I went over to Chuck. I said, I have an idea about doing a criminal tax, a criminal employment tax, payroll. We hadn't had one in years at the ABA. I said, would you guys want to co-sponsor with us? He's like, we're in. And so that is how I got on committee with Kathy and Chuck and all these people. Um, and at the time, he said, what? We're buddies with Victor Song, who was the head of CI at the time. I became friends with Victor from planning this panel and working with them. It's, yeah, no, I get it. You put yourself in a position
Hmm.
to meet the people you need to meet that are worth meeting. But we could keep going.
I know.
Yeah. But this is actually a webinar, is really what this should be. But we'll have to talk about that next. But listen, Timalyn, thank you for taking the time. How can people who want to get a hold of you do so? What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so I am most active on LinkedIn, and a lot of people say, LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn.
Me too.
It's my personality.
Yep.
So I am Timlin Bowens, EA over there. And then if they're interested in joining my mentorship program or seeing what classes I have on my platform, they can find those at americasfavoriteea.com.
Yep. Also, Tax Tips with Timalyn is the blog, and Tax Relief with Timalyn Bowens is the podcast. So I don't think you're difficult to find. Like me, you're kind of everywhere. Um, And so, I mean, I connect with you generally through LinkedIn because I'm also a big LinkedIn fan. But listen, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate your doing this, and I appreciate everything you're doing for the community because it really is. Listen, you help people create a career. In many ways, it's God's work.
Yeah, well, I thank you for the kind words. And like I said, thanks for following up. It was definitely my pleasure to do this. And like I said, talk all things EA tax rep with you today.
All right. No, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I will put a link below in the description. So if you want to go out and connect with Timalyn, it'll be that easy. And until next week on the podcast, thank you.